They say the devil works in the dark, but at Grimley High, the devil just mopped the floors. He had one eye, a limp in his left leg, and the uncanny ability to appear exactly where students didn't want him to be. No one knew his real name. They just called him One-Eyed Ned. And last Thursday, during Spirit Week, they duct-taped him to a locker and put a cardboard sign around his neck that read, "Property of the custodial cryptid." They laughed. They filmed it. They posted it. What they didn't realize was that Ned had been watching them longer than they'd been alive, and when he finally decided to look back, it would be with his one glowing, mechanical eye. Grimley High wasn't famous for much. A few sports trophies from the 80s. A vending machine that once exploded during midterms. But its most enduring legend wasn't a record, it was a rumor, the janitor who never spoke, never smiled, and allegedly never left the school. Kids said he slept in the boiler room and ate rats. Teachers dismissed it as nonsense. But when asked about the one-eyed janitor, even the oldest faculty members got just a little quieter. On Monday morning, the halls of Grimley buzzed with typical teenage cruelty. The seniors were on their 4th day of Prank Week, a tradition as dumb as it was inevitable. This year's targets had already included the lunch lady's wig, the chemistry teacher's toupee, and the assistant principal's unfortunate parking space. But the piece de resistance was planned for Thursday, One-Eyed Ned. Ned, as usual, said nothing when he was cornered near the east stairwell. He simply looked at them, 5 smug seniors, armed with duct tape, a cardboard sign, and a GoPro. They taunted him, slapped the mop out of his hand, and pushed him against the lockers like he was a broken mannequin. And all the while, he stared straight through them. His one good eye didn't flinch. The patch over the other stayed perfectly still. The video would later be captioned, "Janitor.exe has stopped working." The prank lasted 7 minutes. But that was all Ned needed. 7 minutes to memorize faces. 7 minutes to let the circuits in his optic implant warm up. 7 minutes to remind himself what it felt like to be underestimated. That night, while the rest of Grimley slept, Ned was in the sub-basement, an area no one remembered existed. Past the mop closets and pipe cages, he opened a rusted hatch labeled Electrical A. Inside, a humming wall of servers blinked to life as he peeled off the eye patch. Beneath it wasn't flesh, but a smooth, reflective lens embedded directly into his skull. It turned red as it powered on. Streams of data ran across a flickering CRT monitor as Ned typed slowly, deliberately. The screen read, "System override ready." Tuesday morning arrived with a buzz of anticipation. There was a math exam scheduled for 3rd period, and most of the seniors hadn't studied. They were too busy rewatching their video of Ned, counting likes and laughing in the halls. But during the test, right as Mr. Greaves passed out the final page, the lights went out. Not a flicker, an immediate, total blackout. Students screamed. Phones lit up like fireflies. The overhead intercom hissed, then let out a distorted whisper that no one could quite understand. It was enough to send a chill down the spine of even the most cynical senior. The power returned 3 minutes later, but something was off. The lights were colder, dimmer. The clocks had reset. And when Travis, the ringleader of the prank, opened his locker, he found it filled to the brim with mop heads soaked in bleach. A sticky note was pressed to the top. "Clean up your ACT." By Wednesday, the prank group had stopped laughing. Travis swore he saw Ned staring at him through the 2nd floor window during gym. Lisa found her phone had been wiped clean overnight. Charlie's email sent itself to every staff member with the subject line, "I am a garbage person." No one could explain it. No one could prove it. But something had shifted. The school was still intact. But the mood had gone dark. That night, the janitor's closet door slammed shut at exactly 11:01 p.m. The cameras in the hallway, every single one, glitched for precisely 66 seconds. And when they came back on, Travis was gone. His phone lay cracked beside his locker, buzzing with a missed call from unknown. A faint trail of water led to the janitor's closet, now sealed tight with a new padlock. Thursday morning arrived in silence. The usual buzz of gossip had been replaced with tension. Principal Hawthorne tried to keep things normal, but teachers whispered and students looked over their shoulders. No one had seen Ned since Tuesday, yet the floors were somehow spotless. The trash was always empty. A smell of lemon bleach hung in the air like an omen. That day during lunch, someone dared to open the lost and found bin near the gym. Inside were several phones, all unlocked, all belonging to the pranksters. On each screen played a looped video of Ned being taped to the locker. Except in this version, the video didn't end with laughter. It ended with Ned smiling. Only one student, a quiet sophomore named Quinn who'd always sat near the back of the library, had the nerve to speak aloud what everyone else was thinking. "What if," he said, biting into his sandwich, "the janitor was never just a janitor?" A silence fell over the table. Then a light overhead flickered once, twice, and went out. That evening, while the school emptied for the weekend, the maintenance logs auto-emailed themselves to every faculty member. Each log ended with the same line, typed in perfect courier font. "I remember who laughed." And in the sub-basement, behind a wall panel only Ned knew how to open, a dozen monitors lit up one by one, each displaying a live feed of every hallway, every classroom, every face at Grimley High. He watched. He waited. And he smiled. The Monday after the blackout, Grimley High carried an eerie kind of buzz, like a beehive that had just been kicked. No one talked about it openly, but the silence between conversations screamed louder than any gossip ever could. Travis was still missing, though the school labeled it an unexcused absence. His friends, the ones who duct-taped Ned to the locker, suddenly looked like they'd seen a ghost, and maybe they had. Charlie walked around like he expected the floor to give way at any moment. Lisa hadn't touched her phone since Tuesday. And as for Owen and Brett, they both claimed to have forgotten their own locker combinations, despite using them every day for the past 3 years. No one laughed in the halls anymore. Not even the freshmen who used to howl like a hyena every time the intercom squawked. Grimley had been muted. It started again during second period. The lights in the West Wing dimmed slowly this time, like a candle being pinched between invisible fingers. One by one, classrooms went dark. Not all at once, not in a panic-inducing burst, but in a calculated sequence, like someone was flipping a master switch for each room. Mrs. Fenwick's English class was the first to notice. Just as she launched into her lecture on poetic irony, the projector snapped off, and the window blinds rolled down by themselves. No one had touched them. Her students stared blankly as the room fell into a surreal dusk. She flicked the light switch. Nothing. She pressed the intercom button. Static. Then came the sound, barely audible, almost like it was coming from inside the walls. A low hum, mechanical and steady. And then a voice. It wasn't clear what the voice said. Some students later claimed it was their own names, others swore it was a list of sins. One kid insisted it whispered the answers to the next math test, but no one believed him because he still failed. What everyone agreed on was that it was Ned's voice, or at least something like it. Slow, deliberate, and just a little too close for comfort. When the lights came back, Mrs. Fenwick dismissed her class 20 minutes early and took a sick day for the rest of the week. That afternoon, Principal Hawthorne summoned a mandatory staff meeting in the library. She stood at the front, looking paler than usual, gripping the podium like it might run away if she let go. Her voice cracked slightly as she explained the school's technical difficulties, brushing them off as a temporary issue with the central breaker system. Mr. Donovan, the IT guy who still used a flip phone, raised his hand and asked why the security feed had gone completely black during the blackout, and why it rebooted with a message in binary code. No one answered him. He didn't ask again. In a small, dark corner of the school, far beneath the main floor, Ned watched from his network of dusty monitors. His mechanical eye flickered as it scanned facial patterns, matched movement data, and ran a voice recognition program on every teacher who had ever written him off. He wasn't angry. Anger was for amateurs. He was methodical. Everything had its place. Everything could be cleaned: messes, memories, reputations. You just had to scrub long enough. Wednesday brought a new twist. Lisa was headed to her locker after gym class when she noticed a faint smell of bleach wafting from the vents. Not the usual janitorial whiff, but something sharp and deliberate. She turned the dial on her locker and opened it cautiously. Her books were soaked. Sitting on top of them was a mop handle, sawed short, with a message etched into it with some kind of wire. "Silence is not safety." She dropped it and ran. That same afternoon, Owen tried to call his mom from the payphone near the cafeteria, one of the last in town, but instead of a dial tone, he heard a replay of their prank video. It ended with a high-pitched screech that sent him stumbling backward, nose bleeding from the pressure. Brett, always the skeptic, tried to act unfazed. He laughed loudly at lunch, mocked the others for being paranoid, and even shouted, "Hey janitor, you still pissed about the tape thing?" into the hallway. That night, his car wouldn't start in the parking lot. The headlights blinked in Morse code. He didn't understand it, but the pattern repeated every 10 seconds. He stayed in the car until sunrise. The staff had no idea how to control the growing tension. Students weren't sleeping. Teachers were quitting midweek. Principal Hawthorne started arriving 2 hours early to check the power grid herself. But the thing no one could explain was how the school's old backup system, the analog one installed in the 90s, had suddenly come online again, even though it was thought to be defunct for decades. The only person who ever used that system was Ned. At 3:17 p.m. on Thursday, the fire alarm went off. But there was no fire. Instead of the usual blaring klaxon, the alarm played a distorted version of the school's old fight song, slowed down to half speed. The sprinklers didn't go off, but the TVs in every classroom flickered to life, displaying grainy footage from what looked like the janitor's closet. Ned was sitting in the corner, motionless, looking directly into the camera. His eye glowed faintly. He raised his hand slowly, and the feed cut to black. The TVs didn't turn off. They stayed on, humming with static. By Friday, Grimley was cracking. Parents demanded answers. Local reporters circled. A maintenance truck pulled up early in the morning with 2 technicians sent by the school board. They disappeared into the sub-basement around 8:45 a.m. and were never seen again. At least, not by anyone above ground. In the cafeteria, the group of pranksters sat together, not out of friendship but mutual fear. Only 4 of them now. They whispered about what to do, whether to confess, whether to go to the police, whether to transfer schools. But none of it mattered anymore. Ned was already 3 steps ahead. In the darkness of his sub-level domain, he watched them huddle and scheme. He had tapped every speaker, intercepted every group chat, rerouted every escape attempt. His plans were not about punishment. They were about revelation. About showing people who they really were when the lights went out. That night, the power shut off again, this time across the entire school. Not just a wing. Not just a floor. Everything. Lockers jammed. Doors locked. The emergency exits failed. Phones lost signal. And in the pitch black, a single voice came over the intercom, calm and precise. "Time to clean up, Grimley." The sound of footsteps echoed through the halls. One set. Slow. Unstoppable. Quinn Baxter wasn't the kind of kid people noticed. He moved through the hallways like a ghost, always hugging the edge of the lockers, avoiding eye contact, headphones in but never playing music. He was the kind of student who could be present for 4 years and still have his name misspelled in the yearbook. But he noticed everything. And while Grimley High descended into paranoid whispers and flickering lights, Quinn was paying close attention. He had seen the patterns. The blackouts, the subtle glitches, the strange behavior of the prank group. He wasn't scared, he was fascinated. So on Friday night, while the rest of the students scrambled to get out of the building after the sudden power loss, Quinn stayed behind, slipping into the shadows like he'd done 100 times before. If the school was haunted, he wanted to meet the ghost. Quinn's curiosity had started on Monday, when he found an old map of Grimley High tucked inside a dusty copy of Great Expectations, in the library's restricted section. It wasn't the school's current layout, but a blueprint from decades ago, when Grimley had been used as a civil defense shelter during the Cold War. According to the diagram, there were 2 sublevels beneath the basement. One was for storage. The other? Labeled simply Auxiliary Control. That part didn't exist on any modern plans. But something about the font, the faint smudge of old ink, made Quinn believe it was real. And now, as he snuck past the cafeteria in total darkness with only a small flashlight, he was determined to find it. Down near the boiler room, past the rusted lockers and a long-forgotten trophy case filled with cracked plaques, he found what he was looking for, a wall panel that didn't line up quite right. The floor tiles in front of it were scuffed in a circular pattern, as if someone had been standing there repeatedly, turning in place. Quinn pressed against the panel. Nothing happened. Then he remembered something he'd read once about pressure switches. He leaned his full weight into it, holding it for 5 seconds. The panel clicked. A soft hiss escaped from the wall. A thin line appeared around the edges, and the panel slowly swung inward, revealing a staircase that spiraled into pitch black. He hesitated for only a moment before stepping in. The air was cold and smelled of old metal and lemon disinfectant. Each step down echoed like a drip in a cave. At the bottom, he found a massive iron door with a keypad beside it. The keypad blinked with an old-school green backlight. Surprisingly, it still worked. Quinn typed in the only code that came to mind, the year the blueprint was drawn. 1962. The keypad buzzed once. Then the door creaked open. Inside was something between a control room and a Frankenstein laboratory. Dozens of old monitors, some cracked, others still glowing faintly. Wires hung from the ceiling like vines in a jungle. A chair sat in the center, bolted to the floor. And above it, a small camera rotated, clicking once as it locked onto Quinn's face. He froze. The monitors flickered. Then one of them lit up with a static-filled feed from a hallway above. He saw himself, moments earlier, walking past the cafeteria. Another screen showed the prank group, huddled by the gym exit, frantically trying to open a jammed door. Another showed Principal Hawthorne in her office, lit only by the glow of her laptop, frantically typing what looked like a resignation letter. Then the voice came through. Calm, precise, and unmistakably mechanical. "Why are you here, Quinn?" He turned slowly, eyes scanning for a speaker. "I wanted to know what's happening," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Everyone else is afraid, but I'm not. I'm just trying to understand." There was a pause. Then a sound like static and breathing mixed together. "Understanding is earned, not given." Quinn stepped forward, brushing dust off a desk cluttered with schematics, old notebooks, and what looked like a blue maintenance badge. The name on it read Elbridge N. He looked up. "You're Ned, right? Or whatever you are now?" The monitors all went black for a moment. Then one displayed an old staff photo, janitors in faded blue uniforms. Young Ned stood at the edge, both eyes intact, smiling slightly. The screen shifted. A news clipping. "School technician injured in lab fire, I lost. Suspected cover-up." Another. "Local engineer accuses school board of data surveillance scheme, fired without cause." And finally, a grainy video of Ned in court, being dismissed mid-testimony while a judge rolled his eyes. "You tried to warn people," Quinn whispered. "And no one listened." A new voice crackled through. Not mechanical. Human. Raspy, tired, and real. "No one listens to the janitor." Quinn turned sharply. From the far corner of the room, a door he hadn't noticed opened. And there he was, Ned Elbridge. Older, worn, half of his face illuminated by the glow of a monitor, the other hidden beneath the patch. He didn't walk so much as glide, his limp hidden beneath the long, grimy coat. He stared at Quinn for a long moment, then nodded slightly. "I built all of this," Ned said quietly, gesturing to the equipment. "Before they took my reputation, my job, my eye. I stayed behind. Watched. Waited. The school forgot me. But the system didn't. It remembers everything." Quinn stepped closer. "You're controlling the school now. Why?" Revenge? Not revenge, Ned replied, sitting in the chair. Correction. On the screen, Charlie slipped on a hallway floor soaked with sudsy water. Lisa screamed as her phone exploded into glitter and foam. Owen passed out after the lights pulsed in a pattern that matched seizure triggers. Brett? He was nowhere to be seen. I gave them chances, Ned said, his voice low. But cruelty unchecked becomes cancer. You have to cut it out before it spreads. Quinn looked around the room, trying to process the weight of what he'd walked into. So what now? You shut off the lights and just, trap us all here. Break us down until we admit what we did. Confession, Ned replied, is the first step to change. Quinn stared at the blinking monitors. And if they don't confess? Ned's eye flickered. Then we start the deep clean. At that moment, all the screens blinked in unison. A timer appeared. It was counting down from 60 minutes. Above it, a message. Final sweep in progress. Non-compliance will be extracted. Quinn took a step back. You're really going through with this? Ned said nothing. But the hum in the walls grew louder. Doors locked across the building. Speakers began to play a soft, distorted version of the school's anthem, as if the building itself was bracing for something final. And in the control room, surrounded by cables and memories, Quinn realized he wasn't just watching a story unfold. He was part of it. At exactly 6 p.m., the countdown hit 0. The school went silent, not with the stillness of emptiness, but with the suffocating hush of anticipation. Lights across the building died, not in dramatic flashes, but with a finality that felt personal, as if the school itself had chosen to close its eyes. Emergency exit signs went dark. The clock stopped ticking. The vents paused. And the only sound left was the echo of frightened breathing bouncing off concrete walls. Grimly High had been sealed shut. No one could get in. No one could get out. In the gymnasium, what remained of the prank group huddled near the bleachers. They had been trying to escape for over an hour, failing each time. The gym doors wouldn't budge. Their phones didn't work. Every attempt at forcing an emergency latch was met with a short burst of electricity that zapped them backward. Lisa's hand still bore a red welt where she tried to pry open a circuit box. She didn't speak now. None of them did. The bravado was gone. Even Brett, who once called Ned just a blind Roomba with a grudge, now stared at the floor, pale and shaking. A soft hiss echoed from the intercom above. Then a familiar voice, calm, clipped, and low, filled the air like a sermon delivered through a rusted funnel. Welcome to the reckoning. The gym lights blinked on, not with fluorescence, but a strange reddish glow, casting everything in the hue of dried blood. The bleachers began to move on their own, screeching along the floor like tectonic plates. Beneath them, a trapdoor opened, revealing a spiral staircase that seemed to stretch into the earth itself. The intercom hissed again. Confess or descend. One path offers light. The other a lesson. They didn't move at first. Then Charlie cracked. With a choked sob, he stumbled to the staircase and began his descent. Lisa followed without a word. Brett hesitated. Owen stood frozen in place until the gym floor beneath him vibrated slightly, encouraging him forward like a nudge from the building itself. The staircase led to a narrow corridor lit by blinking exit signs, each one warped, the word exit spelled backward. At the end of the hall, a steel door slid open with a hydraulic hiss. Inside was a circular room with old-school desks arranged in a ring. Monitors hung above them like jury boxes. In the center stood a single janitor's cart, gleaming with surgical precision. A squeegee, a mop, a bucket filled with a clear, humming liquid. There were no visible cameras, but they all knew they were being watched. The intercom buzzed again. Sit. It's time to scrub your records. They sat. One by one, their monitors flickered on. Footage from years of hallways and classrooms began playing. Every prank, every whispered insult, every stolen answer sheet, every cruel joke. But it didn't stop at school. Their phones had been accessed. Screens showed messages sent in secret, audio recordings of late-night calls, browser histories they'd deleted and thought forgotten. Every lie. Every betrayal. Every moment of private cruelty laid bare in front of them. Charlie broke down first. He shouted apologies into the air, tears soaking his shirt. "I'm sorry! We were just being stupid! We didn't mean to, Ned, please, we didn't know!" The screen in front of him blinked. A green checkmark appeared. Lisa stood slowly, staring into the monitor. Her screen showed a recording of her laughing while pushing a freshman's tray off a lunch table. Another of her forging signatures to cheat on community service hours. Her voice trembled. "I just didn't want to be ignored. I thought if I laughed first, no one would laugh at me." Another checkmark blinked on her screen. Then there was Brett. His screen showed him holding Ned's eye patch during the prank, twirling it like a trophy. Another showed him bragging in the locker room about how they made the janitor cry, even though that part was never caught on camera. Brett didn't speak. He stood, looked directly at the lens, and said nothing. The silence stretched. Then his monitor blinked red. A high-pitched tone filled the room. The lights flickered. A hatch opened beneath Brett's desk. He stumbled back, but the floor beneath him tilted, and he was dropped out of sight in a single, seamless motion. The hatch sealed shut. The room fell silent. No one asked where he went. Back in the control room, Quinn watched everything unfold. He stood behind Ned, who sat motionless in his chair, his mechanical eye glowing faintly. Quinn had said nothing for the past hour. He watched the countdown, the traps, the tests. Part of him was horrified. Another part, one he didn't like, was impressed. "They confessed," Quinn said quietly. "You got what you wanted. So now what?" Ned didn't turn around. His voice was soft, almost wistful. "Not all of them. But most." Quinn stepped forward. "This isn't just about them, is it?" The monitors shifted again. The feed showed classrooms, offices, parking lots. Teachers gossiping about students. Coaches cutting deals to let athletes pass failing grades. Parents bribing counselors. It wasn't just a few bad kids. Grimley itself had rotted from the inside out, layer by layer, ignored by the very people who were supposed to protect it. "This building," Ned said, gesturing to the screens, "is a monument to negligence. They built it on lies, fueled it with ego, and cleaned nothing. They swept the dirt under the rug until the rug grew legs and started walking." Quinn watched the monitors. "So what are you going to do?" Ned stood for the first time since Quinn had arrived. He walked to a panel and lifted a glass case covering a red switch. The words above it read, "System reset." "I give them one more chance," he said. "The whole school. 1 hour. They get the truth. Every file. Every feed. Every secret. And if they don't change?" Quinn asked. Ned didn't answer. But as he pulled the switch, the lights throughout Grimley flickered back on, not fully, just enough to reveal what had always been there. Speakers buzzed in every room. Students and teachers looked up from their hiding spots. The monitors in classrooms turned on. And across every screen, Ned appeared, no patch, no filters, just a man who had been ignored too long. "This is your mirror," he said. "Look hard. Wipe it clean." The truth had been set loose. Now it was up to them whether they could live with it. The truth spread through Grimley High like a fire wrapped in static. Every screen, every speaker, every piece of technology inside those aging brick walls was now pulsing with footage, audio, and messages once hidden in corners and closets. Students sat in stunned silence as projectors displayed their search histories on the walls. Teachers stared wide-eyed as surveillance clips showed them napping through classes, mocking students behind closed doors, and manipulating grades. There were no safe rooms left, no quiet corners untouched. Every lie, every cruelty, every lapse in judgment was now on display. It wasn't chaos, not yet. It was something worse. Stillness. A heavy, suffocating stillness as people realized they had not only been watched, they had been understood. And remembered. In the teacher's lounge, Mrs. Fenwick dropped her coffee as she watched footage of herself tearing pages out of a student's essay before giving it an F. Coach Brower leaned against the fridge, his mouth hanging open as video after video revealed the deals he made to let failing players keep their spots. In the main hallway, clusters of students stood in awkward circles, watching as clips of their own bullying, cheating, and whisper campaigns flashed across the wall monitors. Apologies came, some sincere, most broken. No one knew where the footage had come from. No one questioned its accuracy. The building itself had become a living archive. In the basement, Quinn stood beside Ned as the final phase unfolded. The system reset hadn't just released the files. It had scrubbed the hierarchy clean. Every ranking, every senior privilege, every record was now gone. Replaced by truth. The monitors now displayed the names of everyone in the school, student and staff, next to color-coded bars. Red for those still hiding. Yellow for those mid-confession. Green for those who had faced their truths and accepted responsibility. No one knew what the bars meant at first. But the moment a red bar student tried to leave the building and was met by a slamming door and a flickering hallway light, they began to understand. It wasn't about punishment. It was about participation. You weren't let out until you were honest with yourself. Charlie and Lisa sat in the auditorium, joined now by others who had come forward voluntarily. They weren't forced to sit in the confession ring. They chose to. They wanted their screens to blink green. They wanted the lights above their heads to dim with relief instead of rage. Even the principal, Hawthorne, eventually entered. Her screen played a reel of her reassigning blame, covering up complaints, and pocketing budget money meant for student programs. When it ended, she didn't cry. She didn't beg. She stood quietly, took the microphone on stage, and said 5 words. I should have done better. Her bar turned green. The auditorium lights brightened. Back in the sub-basement, Quinn watched Ned as he navigated the control panel. The janitor moved slowly now, more like a conductor guiding a fading symphony than a vengeful overseer. The red glow in his mechanical eye had softened. He spoke without looking up. Most of them will come around. Given time. Truth's not a knife. It's a mop. It's slow. Messy. But it works. Quinn sat on an overturned crate. You're not going to trap them forever. Ned shook his head. I never intended to. I just needed them to see what I saw. Then what happens when the doors open? Ned paused. His fingers hovered over the console. For the first time, he looked tired. Not just physically. Deeply, universally tired. I leave, he said. They won't need me anymore. Not in this form. Outside the school, emergency services had gathered, alerted by parents, missing persons reports, and a growing sense of unease from the digital silence of Grimley High. But no one could get inside. Every electronic tool failed. Battery-powered drills stopped working when aimed at the doors. Even analog efforts met with resistance. It was as if the building itself had locked its own spine. Reporters arrived next. Rumors spread. Social media exploded with theories. Hostage situation, data breach, a gas leak hallucination. But none of the cameras from the outside could see what was happening inside. Only the people in the building could witness the reckoning. At 9:13 p.m., the system reached full sync. All files had been reviewed. All screens reset to black. The bars beside every name froze in place. 92% green. 7% yellow. 1% red. The speakers buzzed once. Then Ned's voice filled the entire building one final time. Grimly, your floor is clean. And just like that, the lights came back fully. No more flicker. No more hum. Just clean, bright light. Doors unlocked with quiet clicks. Vents turned on, circulating fresh air. The school sighed, as if it had been holding its breath for decades and finally exhaled. Students and staff slowly stepped into the halls. They looked at one another with new eyes. No screaming, no accusations, just quiet recognition. No one ran. No one pushed. The building had taught them something no detention ever could. You cannot outrun what you leave behind. Quinn stood at the top of the staircase as the first students filed out. He looked down toward the sub-basement, expecting Ned to follow. But the corridor was dark. He climbed back down, calling out once. "Ned?" No answer. Inside the control room, the chair sat empty. The monitors were off. The mechanical eye lens rested on the desk, motionless. The glass casing of the red switch was closed again, sealed with a key that was no longer there. There was no sign of where Ned had gone. Only a freshly mopped floor, perfectly clean, not a footprint in sight. Days later, the school reopened. But something had shifted permanently. The bullying didn't stop entirely, but it lost its venom. Teachers graded with more care. Principal Hawthorne initiated a weekly forum where students could speak freely. The legend of the one-eyed janitor became part of Grimley's DNA. Some said he was still in the building, watching from the shadows. Others claimed he had moved on to another school, another forgotten place with its own dirty secrets. But everyone agreed on one thing: when the lights flickered, even once, you'd do well to think about what you've hidden. Far away, in a facility no one could locate on any map, a row of black-suited officials reviewed surveillance logs from Grimley High. One man, gray-haired with a long scar along his temple, stared at the footage of Ned turning off the lights. "We've found him," the man said quietly. "Subject 0 is active again." Beside him, a sealed file was stamped in red letters, "Reactivated." And beneath it, one name. Elbridge, Ned. Codename, the Custodian.